So we're carrying on with our deep dive into 28 Days Saga. Previously done 28 days later, so now it's time for 28 weeks later. So my first impressions of this film are, okay, yeah, it's not as good as the previous one, I have to admit, although I do hold the previous 28 Days Later quite high in my standards. But this does have some absolutely brilliant pieces and absolutely fantastic parts in it. And I have to admit, I was skeptical when I first saw the story description of the fact of the rage virus is eliminated, then another one crops up again, thinking it's just a rehash. But it's not. It does offer something actually completely different and something new to the table as well. And it's brilliant. So we start off initially with a group of survivors during the rage outbreak, all huddled together, and the main person we're focusing in on is Robert Carlyle's Don. Now, Don is here with his wife Alice, also another load of survivors as well. Two elderly people who ultimately own the house where they're all staying in refuge. And they're all sitting down to dinner, and everything seems pretty normal, albeit under the cover of darkness, they all seem pretty safe. But that changes when they decide to take pity on a young boy who's banging on the door, begging to be let in because he's being chased by a group of infected. They get the boy in, and it seems as though the threat is gone. He sits there and he explains his story, but then the infected come. They break in and they start just wiping out every person that's inside there one by one. Now, Don ends up with Alice inside a bedroom whilst the boy is also hiding. A group of infected come in, and Alice takes the bold step and brave step to run over to the little boy and try and save him and rescue him and stop him from being abandoned. Unfortunately, that causes her and the boy to be separated from Don on each side of the room. Now, Don's got a choice to make. Either he ultimately risks certain death by going back and trying to get his wife and the little boy who doesn't know, or he makes a run for it, and Don makes the choice to run. Don manages to escape the house. He runs as fast as he possibly can go, chased by a whole bunch of infected, manages to make it onto a boat and manages to get away. The last thing he does is look back towards the house and sees Alice at the window before being taken away. And he knows what's happened. He knows she's gone, and it's just him left. Standard title card then comes on to sort of go 28 days later. It reminds us about the initial circumstances of the outbreak. It then moves on to 28 weeks later, where we learn a little bit more about what's happened. We learn that after 5 weeks, the infected have died of starvation. That's caused NATO to send a US military into Great Britain, who have then eventually declared it to be safe from infection. The next step they've taken is then to start to move the people who left Great Britain to escape the virus, to move them back into a district that they have set up as a safe zone. Now, two people that are coming back are important to this, and they are Don's children. That is Tammy and Andy. And the first thing we see about Andy is that while he's being inspected and checked over through quarantine, is that he has a rare genetic trait, and that is two eyes that are different colours. Likely trait that's shared by one of his parents, and that's important to remember throughout the rest of the film. After they're reunited with Don sort of explains his new role in the current living situation, in that he is the caretaker for the main building where everybody's staying. He has access to every single area and puts quite a high level of importance on the job that he does. And I admit, it probably is actually a very important job, being responsible for every single person that's come back into the country. He tells the kids the story about how their mum died and changes a few details to take away the fact that he just abandoned her, to take away the fact that he made a selfish choice ultimately to save his own skin rather than help her out. And the kids accept that. But one thing they don't accept is the fact they can't go back to their old house because it's outside the safe zone. They ignore this. They end up going back to the house, and Andy discovers that, in actual fact, his mum has survived the whole outbreak and she's hiding in that house. The military have followed the kids there, and they remove Alice from the house and they take her to be inspected before allowing her back into the wider population. But it's during this inspection that we find something very interesting. It's the first time that this has come up in the whole series, and that is Alice is immune to the virus. However, there is a caveat to that, and that is while she may not be affected by the virus, she still carries it. She is still contagious and can still infect other people, and that's not good news. So, after hearing from his kids that Alice is still alive, old Don goes up and uses his access to get access to Alice, where he can apologise, say sorry for what happened, but also, and importantly, can give her a kiss, something he hasn't been able to do for so long. But it's a transfer of saliva. Dirty, dirty Don gets his tongue deep in there with his wife, and that's the last thing he does as a sane person. Straight away, the infection takes hold, the rage takes hold, and the first person he sees is his wife, Alice, and he just absolutely obliterates her, takes her out, and there is no chance of salvaging anything that could help the rest of the human race from Alice. She is gone, Don has taken over, and off he goes to spread the virus once again. Where this all takes place is ultimately a military compound where you've got the military scientists having looked through everything, who are aware of Alice's value to society moving on from this. But what they also know is that Alice has two children who they've also put in quarantine, and Scarlett, who is the scientist played by Rose Byrne, knows of the value that these kids have just from the possibility they share the same genetic trait. And the other key important detail about Alice is that she also has two eyes of different colour, a rare genetic trait that is shared with her son. So therefore Scarlett takes control of the kids and tries to usher them out of the building while everyone's being quarantined, but is unsuccessful in doing that. Everyone is put into one place, trying to sort of keep them away from the new batch of infected, but it doesn't work. At the same time, there are a group of soldiers, snipers, on the rooftops above the area that are there to keep control. And Jeremy Renner is one of them, plays a character named Doyle. As soon as the outbreak happens, a Code Red order is initiated. And what that starts off with is the snipers targeting those who are infected and shooting them, putting them down. But it doesn't work because it's too quick. It loses control way too quickly. So the order is then to just shoot indiscriminately, just exterminate every single person that's on the ground floor, exterminate everyone they see, because that is the only way to truly contain the virus. But Doyle doesn't agree with this. He abandons his post, heads down to the survivors that are left, and tries to usher them out of that safe district and into the wider city. He does this just in time as well, because within a few minutes of him making contact with the survivors, the military firebombs the district, trying to wipe out everything that's there on the ground level. The survivors manage to get out, but also so do a batch of infected manage to get out of the safe zone to chase them down. Now Doyle is still in contact with Flynn, who is a helicopter pilot and one of his fellow soldiers, who does come to his rescue in a field, using the helicopter in the best way ever that I used to do on GTA all the time. But it's absolutely fantastic watching that scene. Unfortunately, it's not enough. Flynn ends up leaving and sets up base at Wembley Stadium, telling Doyle that he's going to be stationed there and they need to get to him. Now, Doyle knows the importance of getting these two kids to Flynn. He knows that they are the answer or possible answer to a cure for this virus. So he ends up sacrificing himself to get them away in a car after the military decide to descend upon them after taking out a group of infected. What's key here in this part is that the military are just as much of a threat as what the infected are towards everybody else surviving. If you avoid getting killed by the infected, the military are going to get you instead. There is absolutely no safe place here other than getting in that helicopter and getting off the island, getting off Great Britain. Eventually, the three of them, Scarlett, Tammy, and Andy, the only ones left, they end up in a underground tube station where, I mean, I'm always a sucker for these parts of it, a bit like Silence of the Lambs with the night vision scene. It's exactly what it is. Night vision scope being used by Scarlett to direct the two kids in complete darkness throughout that tube station. And just when you think they've got to the bottom and they're safe, there's Don. He's waiting for them. He's there and he takes out Scarlett just like that. He then turns his attention to Andy, bites Andy before Tammy can then take the gun and shoot Don down, finally putting an end to his reign of terror. But Andy has been bitten Andy is infected, but sharing the same genetic trait in the eyes as his mum, he also shares the genetic trait of being immune to the virus. They manage to make it to Wembley Stadium, they make it to Flynn, they get on a helicopter, and they leave Great Britain. But the key question is, what about Andy? Because he's a carrier, he can still infect other people. Well, it flashes forward 28 days later, and we see Paris is overrun by infected. It does create something more of a question as to how Andy managed to pass it on. Like, who's he kissing? Who's he bleeding on? Who's licking his blood off him? Don't know. That's never answered, but there is, fun to sort of realise that actually it expands a lot further than just the British Isles. Overall, it is a fun time. It is a fun watch and something again you can just watch and just, be completely engaged in. It keeps your attention. It doesn't take it away for an instant. And I mean, just that opening scene itself is just worth watching it. It's absolutely brilliant. So, like I said, for me, my opinion is still not as good as the first one. 28 Days Later is still right up there. But I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 4-star rating. So, what do you guys think? Put your comments down there in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about it. As always, I'd love to read what you thought. And I will see you soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe.